So, chick chick. Can you hear me? Not yet. Ah, now. So I have a very elegant glass today. It's still just water. Um, yeah, I'm going to talk about homemade pressure. And ironically, standing here right now is quite a good example for what homemade pressure really is. I could just sit there and relax and have a beer or two, but no, I had to say yes to this conference, and now I'm standing here with some extra homemade pressure. But of course, this is a good type of pressure, and I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about the bad type of pressure. The type of pressure that you put on yourself um, without it being necessary, making your life much harder than it necessarily should be. And I'm going to focus on homemade pressure in connection with building stuff for the web. So the most exciting part about the web for me has always been this invitation to become independent in your creativity. There's this huge, brilliant medium that connects us all globally. And basically everything you need to build something for the web and for this medium is documented out there. So you just have to connect to it and then just grab all the resources and learn how to do that. And I think it's basically pretty much like a huge Lego store where you pay for the bricks with your time and with your passion, and that is quite amazing. And so, first time I realized that was by following a guy called Sean Inman, who is a designer and a self-taught developer, and he started to build his own tools at the beginning when I was starting to study design. And I saw him build all these great tools like Mint and Fever, and I found it hugely inspiring what he did there. And so in the end of my design studies, that was about 2007, I really wanted to give it a try as well and see how far I can get by creating a concept for something, designing it, and then building it. And that is pretty much the original story of Zootool, how Zootool started. So Zootool was my first adventure on the web. Zootool was a visual bookmark service, so it was all about providing creatives with a way that they could find inspiration on the web, like images, videos, websites, and bookmark that and get a visual collection of it later. A bit like a mixture of iPhoto and Pinterest in a way. So, and I started Zootool as my bachelor thesis project. And my professor afterwards encouraged me to really launch it and not just leave it in the drawer. And I had absolutely no expectations for Zootool, but pretty high hopes. So I was just thinking that this could turn into something that would replace like my client work, and I could just keep on working on that. I was dreaming about it. And it actually turned out that Zootool got quite far. So in the end, after almost 7 years, it got to 150,000 users, which was amazing, and I never expected that. And it really showed me how far I can get on the one hand, but it also showed me how difficult it is to run something like that over such a long time. And basically, it just turned into a financial disaster in the end. It was a constant struggle to keep it online over those 7 years. And unfortunately, we had to shut it down last year. And the current project I'm working on, which is Kirby, is kind of a therapy after that time with Zootool. So it was all about just seeing if I could learn from my own mistakes, not repeat them again, start over, and yeah, create something that works a bit different and maybe a bit better. And I'm quite happy about the current state of Kirby. So it has really turned into quite the opposite of what Zootool was. It's a completely different project. It's a content management system. It has a much smaller target audience, a different target audience as well. And it has managed to create my income, my full income over those 4 years that is running now. And that is quite awesome. So looking at that story, I'd say, of course, it would totally fit this typical saying of you should fail early and fail often. Totally fits to this kind of situation where I just totally messed up the first thing and then got the second thing working in a way. But I have to say that I absolutely hate this sentence because I think glorifying failure is just the wrong way to go for it. I would have preferred not to fail with the first one. It was super painful to fail with it, and it wasn't fun, it wasn't easy. So I think there should be more focus on helping people avoid the mistakes that you make, because I wasn't the first to make those mistakes, and I wasn't the last to make those mistakes, and it's quite sad, to be honest. So my timer is not working, but I hope I just run in time. So let me start at the beginning of a project. The great thing about the web is just that we can just throw something out there. And I often think about restaurants or shops or small cafes or whatever, and think about the risks that they have to take when they get started. Like renting a place, hiring staff, buying expensive furniture, buying expensive equipment, and all those kind of things. And also how difficult it is for them if it doesn't work out, and how difficult it is to shut it down again. On the web, we can just get started, basically even with a cheap shared hosting server running, and just see how it goes for a couple euros a month. And on the one hand, I think that is awesome, because it really means that we can experiment and just try out if something works or not. But on the other hand, it also means that we often keep ourselves from asking some very fundamental questions. Questions about the seriousness of the project and also the longevity of a project. And the longevity, talking about longevity or sustainability, that totally doesn't fit to the web itself, because the web is evolving so quickly, it's so fast, technology around us is so fast. And if you think about it, talking about 10 years on the web, that seems like an eternity, like eons. But building something for the web most probably is going to involve people in a way. So we build a service that people sign up for, or we build an application that people can download, or we launch an open source project that people can build on top of. And people actually care about the longevity of a project. Well, they might not be aware of it, but they just don't expect it to go down or shut down, change into something different. And that is quite a problem, because we see it so often. And we love to talk about user experience. User experience is a huge topic. And in my opinion, we have absolutely no right to touch the word user experience if there is an exit strategy in mind for the thing that we create, because that will always be the worst case scenario for our users. There's nothing that could go more wrong than that. So some of the questions that I think we should ask ourselves before starting something is really about how serious is this going to be? And if it's meant to be serious, then we should ask ourselves, is it the right idea? It's often easy to get excited by a new idea and think like, oh man, this would be so cool. But really having an idea that keeps you engaged and motivated over years is quite a different thing. So asking yourself, will this be something I will be still interested in even after 10 years or after 5 years maybe? And if that's not the case, then we should maybe reconsider if we should start at all. And another question is, are we going for the right type of project and also for the right scale of project? So with Zootool, I was always quite happy with the idea. It kept me motivated even after 7 years, and I guess I would have shut it down much earlier if it wasn't about being so motivated about it and really wanted it to stay alive. But I went for the wrong type and also for the wrong scale of the project. With type in that case, I mean that when I started, I just wanted it to get out there as easy as possible and find a way for people to sign up or to use it as quickly as possible. And the obvious choice in that case was providing it as a hosted service, because then anything that I want to control is easy to control. I know that I can control the service, the technology stack, the sign-up process. I can send out updates really easy, and it's really easy for people to just get started without downloading or installing something. And I was reading so much at that time about running hosted services, like all the technology parts about it, how to do that, how to set it up correctly. But I never really read something about the responsibility that you take with starting something like that. The responsibility for the security of your users' data, the responsibility of keeping it online all the time. And I found that, especially in my case, where I started this as a single man team, it got a huge burden over the time to care for that, care for the security, care for keeping it online all the time. It really turned out to be extremely stressful. So, and the second question was about the scale of the project. In the end, it got too big, and I have to say, I didn't realize that until it happened. I just kept on caring for get it growing and growing and growing. And it was absolutely the wrong decision to let it grow that way. I should have focused on a smaller user base and care more for those users. And that's quite a problem as well, because you don't realize that during the process, and it's also something that you get a lot told from the outside, that you really want to grow. And so, especially by running Kirby now for a couple of years, which has a totally different size with just around 6,000 official licenses, I'm much more coming to the conclusion for myself that it's not about growing something really big and finding the success there, but going for what some call like the 1,000 true fans. And I really like this term because it fits so perfectly. There's this idea behind this phrase that you just have to find 1,000 true fans to build something sustainable that keeps you going. And of course, if you aim for 1,000 true fans, it's much easier to care for them, connect with them. And basically, I found for myself that this is where it's all about. Connecting with your community, being able to care for them, hear what they like, hear what they don't like, and really get connected pretty closely. When it's coming to sustainability and longevity, it's of course all about money as well. And money is a huge source for homemade or for optional homemade pressure. On the web, we are caught between this vast contrast of multi-billion-dollar companies on the one side and the free software advocates on the other side. And we somehow have to find a way in between those two extremes. And there's also a lot of bullshit bingo going on. Sentences like, do what you love, money is just a side effect. It's this typical thing when you get started, which is super easy to distract you and really like make you think or make you believe that you can just figure out how to make money out of it later, having it as a feature release maybe or something. And that is exactly how I started with Zootool, because it was totally fitting to my situation. I didn't feel like a business person. I was quite comfortable in my situation as a student, being a freelancer at the same time, making my own money. I wasn't really under pressure to make it work or make it generate some revenue right from day one. And so I felt like, yeah, this is great. Let's just start it and see how it goes, and then I can still put some pro accounts on it later, and it will totally work out. And of course, it didn't. With that idea of starting something first and then figuring out how it goes later, there are two problems, or a couple problems, but one major problem is that you instantly have to balance that in a way. So what I did was just keeping on working on client projects during the day and then working on Zootool during the night and on weekends. So the typical situation And that is what Chris said before. It didn't feel like work. It was like the Zootool part was really fun, especially in the beginning. So it felt like a hobby, and I was a student, so working at nights wasn't a big deal as well. And so that is totally cool in the beginning, but it starts to hurt big time when you get into trouble with it, and when you start to maybe have a serious relationship, or you become a dad, or things like that, and you find that this is not a good lifestyle. Um, and then also, by starting something for free, you set the expectation that it is free. And this is what happened with Zootool. It was running for a year, I guess, or I don't know exactly, for free. And then I started the pro accounts. And of course, there's always the true fans, the user group, the core user group that is happy to pay for it. Um, but it turned out that that wasn't enough. So it was just, there were a few people actually paying for it. And it had to do with the expectation that many people just kept keeping the free version and weren't like willing to pay a couple extra dollars a month for some additional features. So that is an issue. And at the same time, of course, by making it grow, you generate more costs. That gets you into additional trouble. And then with providing something for free and also always having a free tier, I started to realize that you get the wrong people on board. And that is also something that you start to realize pretty late. So in case of Zootool, it was just massively getting in spam. And I never really got control of it. So it was really difficult at times to get control of the spam accounts and get rid of them again. It didn't really work out till the end. So with Kirby, I knew from the beginning that this should be different. It should make money right from day one. And it wasn't about becoming rich, of course. It was all about just being able to allocate enough time to it and not having the situation where I have to spend all the nights on it again. But instead, being able to skip client projects and work more on Kirby, make money out of it, and then make it grow organically. And I'm super happy that it worked that way. But of course, then with that model, I hit the free software advocates and the other extreme that I told about before, where people were telling me, especially with the content management system, that my idea is just bullshit. Why would anybody pay for a content management system if there are so many open source solutions out there? And then I started with this idealistic idea of a pricing model where the source code is just entirely on GitHub and you can download it from there and it's open and there is no anti-piracy protection, and I basically don't notice if someone just uses it for free. But if you want to run it legally, then you have to buy a license. And again, people were telling me that this is not going to work out. Why would anybody buy a license if you can just download it and use it for free? And I still, from time to time, get tweets like this. If you can explain that to me later, that would be really cool. I don't get the logic. But I can wholeheartedly enjoy it because it turned out over the last 4 years that there are a lot of people who actually love to pay for it. And I think it has all to do with the idea of actually sustaining a product. That is what people tell me about it, and that is fantastic. And I think it has to do with a lot of services shutting down, a lot of open source projects being abandoned, and people are just being fed up with this thing where they invest their professional time or their work, their private time into something, and then they can't use it anymore afterwards. So I even get a lot of emails asking me how well Kirby actually does. And they ask me about some numbers, if I'm willing to give them out, or what my future plans are. And it's really cool to see that people care about that. They want it to stay alive, and they want me to, it seems that they want me to be able to spend time on it, and that is quite awesome. So putting a price tag onto something right from the beginning and being confident about it that it can work out is a very good way to reduce some extra homemade pressure that you can have on the other side. So, but even when you figure out the money part, there is a lot of additional optional sources for homemade pressure, and one of them is technology. Um, I guess we are all in here together on this constant race of finding the latest and greatest JavaScript framework, database, language, server, blah, 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 whatever, trying to keep up. And of course, especially when you build something on your own, I always felt this huge pressure to be professional with it, to be efficient with it, and when you launch something, you somehow open yourself to the world, to the critics, and especially if you launch something that people can check out, see the code or whatever. And it's kind of scary, and I think some people never really launch what they build because of that fear of being criticized or not professional enough or yeah, un yeah. So and with this, I think there is this danger to jump on new bandwagons all the time, just in order to feel more professional, feel like compensating this in a way. And with this quest for for new technology and new stuff, I feel that we are running for something that is actually not there. We somehow forget about just focusing on what we really built and focusing on how we can improve with what we built and not trying to solve issues that we don't have yet. Because if we commit ourselves to all the latest and greatest technologies and methodologies, we will always be on this quest and they will be outdated just another week afterwards, and it will always be that way. So you can never really you can never really escape from it. A great tweet about this has been coming from John Rasick just the other day, and he said, one shouldn't try to chase the JS framework dragons, and that applies to, I think, a lot of other technology sites. Instead, study new frameworks to gather skills which you can apply to your existing code. And I'm writing HTML and CSS now for more than a decade, and I still feel that I can learn about this daily. So I always have like new stuff coming around, and like, oh my God, you can do it that way. That's amazing. And so I really think that we often don't focus enough on the technology that we use. It might not be as exciting, it might not be the latest and greatest shit, but we can always learn more about the stuff that we actually use and become better in that way. And be more confident about using those tools. Rachel Andrews has written a fantastic article about that just recently, about being more confident with the technology stack that you use. And yeah. So we always get told that we should step out of our comfort zone. And I think that is quite a risky sentence in that case, because you always feel like you have to do that. I think we should instead just extend our comfort zone or make it strengthen it. I think it's a good thing to stay in your comfort zone in some parts and really know more about what you currently do there. In my opinion, you can write a horrible app with the most awesome technology stack behind it. And you can also write a fantastic application with a super boring technology stack. It's all about how you put the different parts together. And it's just a tiny little piece of the huge puzzle. So being boring is awesome. And being boring is also a good way to reduce some of the pressure that you put on yourself. What I do is I procrastinate, as Jessica Ish would say it. So whenever I'm not motivated or I feel like, not just in the right mood, and then I play with all kinds of other frameworks or database systems or whatever, and just see how they work and what they do. And it's really cool because you can spend some time on it, but then you can also forget about it again and then just take away the good things of it. Another huge source for optional homemade pressure is features. So when you launch something on the web, of course, you really care about it. You have the best intentions. it's becoming your digital baby. You really want it to prosper and happily grow. And that often means that it's extremely difficult to handle feedback. And especially, I found it, like after years of client work, I found it really difficult to handle feedback that is not just about a project I'm not that much involved with. So with client feedback, you can always say, okay, I either try to convince them to do it in a different way because I'm really happy about the project in general and I want to do the best for them, or you can just forget about it and say, whatever, I don't care, as long as they pay me well enough. But with your own project, the feedback is personally. It's always personally. It's super difficult to not take it personally. And that means that, of course, the pressure is much higher to satisfy your users and react to the negative feedback and the positive feedback that they give you. And that's exactly what I did. So in the beginning of Zootool, I would react to each and every email and try to somehow solve the problems that they had or build the features that they wished for. And I constantly did that. And there is this satisfactory part about it, because if you do that, of course, the feedback that you get afterwards will always be fantastic. People will love you for it. But it's the direct path to bloatware. It's like, and I think it has to do with again, with confidence, not learning to say no, being confident enough about the vision that you have for your software, for your product, and learning to say no is a big task. I'm still learning that. I'm still not really good at it, but I became better over time because I realized that if I don't do it, I'm just messing it up. So Zootool was quite focused in the beginning, but got totally bloated over the years, and it was a nightmare because I've lost control over it. And of course, you load some extra huge amounts of pressure on top of yourself. If you build all those features, it will always backfire. And so with Kirby, I'm very strict about it nowadays. That doesn't mean that I don't react to user feedback or that I don't add some features if they ask me for it, but it also means that I have a clear path where I want to go forward, and if something doesn't fit there, then I just have to tell them. As I said, I'm not really good in saying no, so in the beginning I wrote just huge answer emails and just explained every little detail why I'm not going to add that, just to feel better about it and not like feeling to let them down in a way. I'm getting shorter now, it's good. But yeah, it's really important, I think. And it helped me to try to calculate some costs for those features. And that's another problem because with building something on your own, you don't really have a relation to costs. You don't have an hourly rate or a budget for it. You just work on it, and that's it. And so I try to calculate costs in a way that I ask myself, what are the consequences of it? How hard would it kick me in the ass if I add this? The short-term consequences, long-term consequences, what are the dependencies that I'm binding to myself, especially, for example, if you work with an external API, what happens when that shuts down or when it changes? How fast can I react to those changes? What happens when it turns into a paid API? All this kind of stuff. And then ask yourself, what are the side effects of adding the feature? How many more tests do I have to add? How many more documentation do I have to write? And how much more complex would the app become or the interface become? And then finally, what would happen? Is there a chance to take it away if I realize it doesn't work out? And also ask yourself, is it really something that a lot of people want, or is it just this one single user who's really tough in sending you some badass feedback, but actually he's the only one who really wants that? So yeah, and that instantly brings me to another optional source for homemade pressure, and that is the entire topic around providing support and running an application. It often feels like when you've launched something, the hard work is done. and afterwards it's all about just sending a couple emails, and that's basically just it. But it's quite the opposite, because the time before the launch is the time where you spend your fun work on it, and the time afterwards is the nasty stuff. So support isn't really fun, I have to say that. It's sometimes really cool to connect to people, but in general it's just really exhausting. And also writing docs is not really like the most fun part about it. So, but that is also one of the most important things to care for your application. With Zootool, at some point I just gave up. There was too many support requests coming in. I wasn't able to handle them anymore. I just let them go into a folder and forget about it. And of course, this is horrible, because good feedback, good support is a marketing tool in a way. It's really helping to build the entire spirit around your product. And it's not a good way to deal with it that way. So with Kirby, I try to become better there. It's difficult. I'm still figuring it out somehow. It worked for me quite well by just dedicating a certain time each day on support, and doing that constantly over and over again, and also by converting every support request into documentation, and just investing in documentation as much as I can. So good documentation really helped to reduce support requests as much as I can. Of course, writing docs, as I said, it is not the most fun work to do. It somehow is really difficult to put yourself back and think about the time when you didn't know about this application. You are totally involved with it. You know every feature of it inside out. So it's really difficult sometimes to think in a way that a newcomer would think about it. But it's extremely important. Another way that helps to reduce pressure around that is just let the community help you. That worked great for Kirby, where the documentation is now on GitHub, and people can just send me pull requests for the documentation, and they regularly do that, and it's really cool to get them on board and let me help that. Not because I'm a lazy person, but because it's really good to see what they would like to add to the docs, or what they don't understand and need to be better documented. And then there is one last chapter about homemade pressure, optional homemade pressure, and that is just by being a jerk. So there's a little story around that. I wanted to become better at doing support for Kirby when I started Kirby, and I created a forum around it, because that seemed obvious to find a better way to let people connect to each other and talk to each other. I didn't do that for Zootool. The community itself never really got in contact. And so I was looking for a forum software, and I made two mistakes there. The first mistake is that I didn't find one that I liked, so I wrote my own. You should never do that. It's a horrible idea. And the second one is that I just lied to myself afterwards about how that went. So basically, the activity on the forum was pretty low, and I always thought like, oh well, I'm doing awesome support, I'm writing good documentations, Kirby is really easy to understand. So that's the reason why there's the activity on the forum is really low, because people just get it. It's totally easy. And of course, that wasn't true. And people started to complain at a certain point about the lacking features of the forum, not being able to connect in real time, and all those things. And so I switched to Discourse this year in March. And Discourse is a pretty awesome forum software. It's also a huge beast, but it's pretty cool. And the activity just skyrocketed within a week. It was like, oh my God, I'm such an idiot. And at the same time, the support requests dropped around 50%. And I was okay, that was really stupid. Sometimes it's just about making the wrong assumptions, sticking to them, thinking that you know everything around that stuff. So yeah. And then, last but not least, not from the technical side, but I think we really overanalyze ourselves when it comes to be more efficient, to be more productive. I guess we really sometimes try to compete with those machines that we use every day. they are so efficient, right? They are so productive. They don't stop. They don't have like this breaks where they just are on Facebook all the time or on Twitter. And I think we forget about the fact that we are human beings and that we are not those machines, and that we sometimes should really just try to not be so hard with ourselves. So during all this time, all this struggle with Zootool that I talked so much about today, I always tried to compensate that. I was always fighting, like, okay, it's not working out, I have to work harder. It's not working out, I have to work harder. And it's like it's a slow but gradual way to driving insane. So I think that is an important part, to just accept more of the mistakes that we make, and that we are not able to be productive all the time. And then also like growing a thicker fur, and being more confident about what we do, not reacting to all the influences that we got from outside, being scared about the competition all the time, feeling pushed to do something in a way that we don't want it to do, scaling to a size that we are not comfortable with. I think in the end, what homemade pressure really is it's all in our hands. And that's it. Thank you very much.
As a reminder, ask questions on the Nightlybuild.io to the Nightlybuild.io Twitter account. Enough tweets about my mom. We had enough of those. So we had just a few questions about this. I mean, first of all, thank you very much. It's quite a step to do your own thing, and it's even just doing a script on GitHub and getting the feedback. Do you also agree that it's kind of a drug? You know, feedback and fixing things makes you feel good, so you want to fix more issues. And
yeah.
It's not that you write buggy code on purpose, but it feels so good to fix things, and at the same time, you just then drop off some of the annoying requests instead of just starting to filter them.
Do I have to?
No, it's fine.
Okay. It's absolutely addictive, like hugely addictive. And I think that's quite the biggest problem around it, like why it's so easy to create bloatware, because it is so addictive to react to it all the time and not say no. And it's kind of feeling, it sounds a bit stupid, but feeling needed in a way, just having a purpose for what you built there, and seeing that people like it and then react to it, and it's totally addictive, of course.
And it gets quite interesting when you realize how artificial that need is when real life needs come in. Like when you like randomly said like, oh, in case you become a father out of a sudden, and it had nothing to do with that, and these kind of things. Then when you had real life needs, then out of a sudden you realize that these 20 pull requests are not that important.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to be honest, like the birth of my son has been an important step to leave some of the stress behind. Just finding yourself in a situation where you realize, okay, the stuff that I have cared so much about all those years, it's not that important actually. And also like realizing if this shit goes down and it's not available for a couple hours, or if there's something broken, I don't have to fix it like in the next second. There is more important stuff around it, and that's also really important for me to be like less stressed about it in general.
In case you're offended by words like shit, speak the fuck up.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't even realize I said that. Did I say that?
It's terrible, isn't it? I mean, what kind of father are you? This is kind of that.
I can never make him watch that.
No, exactly. We have to beep that out. It's going to be awkward. It's going to be annoying. One of the things that we got here as a question is, why didn't you sell Zootools?
There was an offer, and it was more expensive to take that offer than to... Yeah, it was a shitty offer.
Does it have to do with German bureaucracy, or?
Yeah, that was one part, and then also I felt like if I sell that now and the other guys are totally fucking it up, then it's
okay. That's enough of that. Okay.
I'm sorry. Then it's going to be. I felt like if it was a better step in the end to let it go than to give it to someone else who doesn't follow the same spirit with it.
It's tricky, isn't it? Because you spend so many years in it. It is your baby, not your real one, because you have another one of those. But it is your thing, and then you just don't want to see it pivoted somewhere else. I've got a few domains that people offer me a lot of money for, but I'm like, I've got things in there that I haven't maintained for years, but I don't want some pawn pop-up to be on that site.
Absolutely. I mean, we had a couple more offers that I just didn't react to at all because they were so unserious. They were so I knew if I go for that, I can make a couple dollars maybe out of it, but it will just be a horrible app afterwards, and the former users will just hate me for it. And so I felt it's going to be the better step.
Does deciding which tech feature wanted by customers to include into Kirby put you under pressure? Does it?
Yes, of course. I mean, yeah, it's always this like you ask yourself if you know the path. I mean, I've talked a lot about confidence, but of course I'm not a really confident person, so I always ask myself, is this the right decision? Am I knowing the best way how to go for it, or is it just a stupid vision that I have for it? Should I react to it because I'm obviously wrong or something? So I'm always asking myself this, and it's of course another type of pressure. I could have made another chapter around it.
Talking about the first 1,000 important users, do you think something like a plugin system or an open API allows you to get kind of users that work on the product with you, or is this too early at the beginning? Is this something you should roll out after you've been a success?
I think it's important to get people on board as soon as possible, especially developers, because they can really build that group for you, or they can really help you to make it a much bigger thing that you could do on your own. So I think it's really important. It depends on the kind of product that you launch. I mean, with Zootool, the public API didn't really work out. I think it was the wrong target audience in a way, so there weren't too many developers jumping on board of it. There could be other reasons for it. With Kirby, it works really well, and it worked quite well right from the beginning, so I think it's an important thing to have that.
So Jörn Zefferer has, what software as a service products can you think of that actually listen to suggestions from users? I've never seen that working. So this is Basti competition time or something, or?
I know some, and I know it, especially one. So I'm a Protonet user. It's a startup from Hamburg, and they do this awesome. They built this also awesome personal cloud thingies that you put in your home, and then you can run some kind of base camp on it, and they react on user feedback really well. So but they also have their own vision, so they add a lot of the stuff that you ask for, but they do it in their own way, and they still like keep the control over it, and they do it quite well. I think I saw a couple more. Yeah, couldn't name some right now.
As someone working on browsers, what I always find is that 90% of the feedback is like, your competition does that, you should do it as well.
Yeah, exactly.
What's the best way to deal with that kind of pressure?
I started to just shut down everything that has to do with competitors. That's not always like the best thing you can do it, but I feel like caring too much about what they do and listening to everything. Sometimes people really blackmail you. That's happening to me all the time. Like, I would really use that if you add that feature, and if you don't add that feature, I will go to them. Like, okay, then go to them. It's like I tried not to care too much about it.
I love that blackmailing of potential users, you know?
Yeah.
I would love to use your stuff if you did that, and I've never used your stuff before, and I don't even know what it is, but I learned that feature somewhere else, and this is the thing to complain about right now. Did you think of something like a hosting package as well? I mean, like, that's how WordPress works. WordPress you can download, you can mess around it for free, but basically they make most of their money with having WordPress.com.
Yeah. That was a decision right in the beginning where I thought that it could be a viable way. Ghost is doing really well with that. Discourse is doing well with that. And of course, it would be a good idea, or it would have been a good idea, but I just messed the hosting part up too much with Zootool. So I was thinking, okay, I really want to get away from this kind of pressure to run something over a long time and sitting on in holidays in the hotel lobby and fixing something on the server via an iPad or something. So I really wanted to get away from that. So I was thinking about a professional hosting provider who does that, but the right opportunity hasn't come around yet. So it might be something in the future that could be interesting, but not for now.
One thing I learned in my career over time is that delegating is one of the biggest skills that developers have to learn after a while. As you said, I write my own forum software because I didn't like the 5 ones that I looked at. We keep doing that, and
all the time.
So would you also say that delegation is a good thing, and sometimes using what is out there is the right solution rather than writing it yourself again?
Yes. Yes. No, I can't say much more about it. Of course, it's something. It's also about, like, if you build something on your own, you feel like you have to control all those different parts about it. You get much more obsessed with it pretty quickly, and so delegating often feels like you really have to trust those people who you delegate this to, and it feels scary if they mess it up. What happens? And so yeah, it's difficult, definitely.
But people surprise you, giving them a chance. They can actually grow around you and take over from you afterwards. It's really interesting to see.
Yeah.
Well, thanks very much for this.
Thank you.
We now have a break of 15 minutes. This is Germany, so you will be back on time. So 7:50 is when we're going to be back here. So 7:49 and 12 seconds, I expect all of you in the door. Use the break to look at the job board. Use the break to look at what's out there in terms of sponsoring. Have a drink. Use the biological features for biological things. Only those features, not anywhere else. And I see you back here in 15 minutes. Thank you.
Danke.